The Poppy Playtime antagonists offer a variety of different sequences. Some offer chases, boss fights, and many more. Some are pretty intense and can be difficult, while some can be really easy. So today I'm going to rank all of the antagonists you go up against in the franchise so far, from easiest to hardest. A few disclaimers: this isn't worst to best, so some antagonists that are ranked low does not mean they are bad. It means they are easier than the other ones, at least for me. So this list is specifically gameplay wise, no story. Also, I will only be ranking those that pose a threat to the player and offer a sequence, so like a chase or fight. We will not be ranking Kissy, Missy, or Poppy because you don't fight against them. Same thing with the prototype because we haven't yet. Boxy Boo has no sequence in the main game. I know he is in the spin-off, but that is just another player controlling him, so that shouldn't count. And Pianosaurus will not be on this list because there is no sequence really. You have no control over the player, and it is pretty much more of a cutscene than a sequence. If we did rank him, he would be dead last. Alright, let's get started. Nightmare Huggy Wuggy. Like I said, just because he is last does not mean he is bad. He is the easiest because no matter what you do, you will survive. It's all fake, nothing is real. Obviously, this was intentional, so I don't have complaints about it. I honestly think it's a really good scene, but it's the easiest. Nightmare Critters. I feel these guys were a downgraded version of the regular critters from Chapter 3. In Chapter 3, I think the sequence the critters had was more difficult because they were much more like hidden and can pop out of nowhere. With these guys, you will always see them coming and they have to hit you 3 times, or 2 I think, in order to fully kill you, which was a problem in Chapter 4 for me. I did like how some just launched at you, but other than that, they are very easy to encounter. Bunzo Bunny. The memory game does have somewhat of a challenge in the 4th round, but overall it is pretty darn easy. It is my favorite minigame out of the 3 in Chapter 2, but it is 100% the easiest as well. The colors aren't said really that fast except the last part, but you just hit the arrow button. Nothing really much to say. It is just the easiest minigame out of the 3 in Chapter 2, but again, that is intentional. PJ Pugapillar. This is basically red light, green light, meaning it is pretty easy. You just go when the music starts playing and then stop when it stops playing. But the reason why I have it higher than Bunzo Bunny is because it is kind of difficult to find out where to go after completing the course, but at the same time it is pretty obvious because it has a glowing yellow handle. Honestly, I would have ranked this sequence higher if the game forced you to take the hard route of the slides, but because it is optional, it is ranked this low. Bubba Chops. I feel her sequence should have been much harder, to be honest, but because she has to hit you 3 times, it isn't that hard. After she hits you with her toxic green goo, whatever that is, she kind of walks away to reposition herself, which allows you to do the same. Then the goo fades off and the process repeats itself, making it pretty easy. But the reason why it is higher than the other ones is because the puzzle you have to accomplish does have some challenge. Finding the key card was definitely a little tricky for me, and I did have a little hard time with it. And finding the batteries isn't really that easy. Mini Huggy Wuggies. Now we are entering more like medium difficulty-ish. These guys do have some challenge towards the end. At the beginning, it is really easy, but as more come, it does get harder. Every time I play this minigame, I either die or get very close to dying. It could be a skill issue of mine if I have a low reaction time, because that's the point of the minigame, but I personally think it is the hardest one out of the 3 in Chapter 2. These smiling critters, the environment they are in, where it is all dark and where there are multiple routes, does bring some challenge because these critters can pop out of nowhere and sometimes and just get you. The puzzle having to put the big blocks on top of the switches is kind of tricky to figure out, but not that much. The beginning part is easy, but until you get to the main area where more starts coming, the difficulty does increase, but not by a lot. The Doctor. This hurts me putting him this low on the list considering he is the creator of all the experiments and he is this easy. Now, he isn't like the easiest boss or thing ever. He has a bit of difficulty, which is why he is ranked at number 8. But as a main antagonist in the franchise, he is pretty disappointing and really easy. I even thought Yarnaby was harder to encounter, which is not a good thing. It is kind of strange to me that the Doctor has the 3-hit system while Yarnaby does not. I guess it makes sense with Bubba Chops and Nightmare Critters, but why the Doctor? Basically, the paths you have to take and finding the batteries are the only real challenge here. I like the idea that there are multiple of him chasing you and it can be unexpected at times, forcing you to take another path while watching out behind you. But overall, it should have been much harder. Dog Day. Kind of strange that I have Dog Day higher than the Doctor, but looking back at it, I actually had a harder time with Dog Day than the Doctor himself. His chase is pretty short, so it isn't really that hard, but it also isn't really easy. The areas where the smiling critters are like chilling in the corners do throw you off. It's similar to the Huggy Wuggy chase where you gotta be careful and choose the right path because then it can waste time and then the monster or toy is going to catch up and kill you. And the Dog Day chase does just that and I don't really have any complaints about it. I feel this sequence has the right amount of difficulty and suspense in chapter 3. Mommy Longlegs. Now we are getting into like the main antagonist of the chapters. I do think Mommy Longlegs is the weakest and also the easiest out of the 4. And when I say weakest, I don't mean her strength. I mean like in terms of quality out of the 4. However, the only really difficult part I would say is grabbing onto the handles. Especially the one where you have to look up, which is annoyingly hard in a way. Like every time I replay this chase, that part is the part that gets me killed sometimes because the hand grabbing onto the handle can get clunky and if you miss, you are pretty much dead. It is a solid chase and has some similarities to Huggy Wuggy's chase and Dog Days where you gotta be aware of your path, but I wouldn't say it is as hard as Huggy Wuggy's though. Now the top 5 are the ones I had a hard time with, except one, which I'll go into later. But next up is Miss Delight. She honestly provides one of the best sequences in the entire franchise because it's something new, you know? It reminds me of a Boo from Super Mario where you have to look at them to have them stop moving. It created a lot of challenge because you had to keep your eye on her while also solving the battery puzzles, and there were quite a lot. Also, this sequence is probably like one of the longest sequences, making it very suspenseful and pretty stressful as well. The difficulty even picks up more when she is able to go through these cracked walls and there are multiple doors. Honestly, no complaints. She has the right amount of difficulty and made this sequence tons of fun to play. Huggy Wuggy, the very first antagonist in the game, and I personally think he had the perfect balance of having a very fun chase scene while also being pretty challenging. Of course, if you replay it again, it is really easy because you already know where to go, but the first time doing this sequence did take a couple of tries, simply because of how it's structured. It isn't just run in a straight path as fast as you can, you also gotta crouch in this one area, make fast turns, and be very aware. This chase tests your reaction time, and sometimes your reaction time can be worse when being chased or when you are scared, and Huggy Wuggy delivers an awesome chase. Doughy the Dough Man. Now this one was hard to rank because when I first went up against Doughy, I had a hard time mainly because of the bugs. Like sometimes he would just stay in this one spot and just go up and down and up and down, forcing me to go somewhere else or go close to him so he can chase me. Now I could ignore the bugs, but it's kind of hard to because that was my first experience when going up against Doey. Maybe without the initial bugs at launch, he probably would have been easier, or maybe I just have a skill issue. The most difficult part was with the flare because you had to freeze him at the right time, and sometimes when he grabbed you, it was hard or it felt near impossible sometimes to have him let go. I don't know if that was intentional or if that was a bug as well, but either way I had a pretty hard time with this boss. Another part that ranked up the difficulty was that you can only attack him once per saw, forcing you to get Doey to another area in the arena, which was a pretty good way to make the fight more challenging in my opinion. Yarnaby. Okay, this is one where it is really hard for me to rank because technically I never went up against Yarnaby. If you watched my playthrough of the game, Yarnaby didn't spawn in that one section where you have to hide while also hitting the switches. I even tried restarting and reinstalling the entire game, but nope, he doesn't spawn for me. Now the areas where he did spawn were pretty easy, but not super easy. So this ranking is going to be based off what I have seen online and not from my experience, sadly, because I don't really have any. And from online, I see that people hate him a lot. Apparently he was really difficult to go up against, but like annoyingly difficult. He could grab you even though you were hiding, he was faster than you, and apparently his AI program will camp and come in the worst times, making it insanely frustrating, so I decided to put it at number 2. And in number 1 we have Catnap. If you have seen my other rankings, you know I am a Catnap glazer. I think chapter 3 is the best and that Catnap is the best antagonist and the hardest. I remember how intense it was when playing it the first time, and it took me like 10 or more tries. The hardest part is definitely going up with the purple hand and then using the green hand to create the smoke. You want to take your time, but not for too long, because then Catnap will come and kill you. What I love most about this sequence is how it utilizes all the hands to make a fun and challenging experience. You have to use the flares to check if it's the real Catnap, hold down the ceiling door if Catnap opens it, use the purple hand to get to this area like I just mentioned, and use the green hand to activate the smoke and to kill off Catnap. The fight also gets progressively harder as you remove batteries, which is something I always like in video games, about how it gets harder as you start to progress more, and this fight does it really well. That is going to be it for today's video. Let me know your own list, or just tell me who you think was the hardest boss or fight or chase, whatever. Consider liking and subscribing to see more content like this in the future. I'll see you all in the next one.